The following program contains graphic images of violence that might be disturbing to some. Viewer discretion is advised.
Tonight, a neighbor in crisis. Mexico is a country divided, with a new president and a huge problem.
As Butch Cassidy said to the Sundance Kid, who are these guys?
They're paid assassins.
Not far from the beaches of Acapulco, a bloodbath. Narco traffickers have all but taken over parts of the country, leaving its citizens paralyzed.
What scares you the most?
Being at the wrong place at the wrong time. Nowadays, you get shot like everywhere.
And with hundreds of millions of dollars at stake,
it's all about greed and it's all about turf.
Staying on the right side of the law for the police can be a life or death choice.
Many of those cops paid the ultimate price. They wouldn't take the silver. They wouldn't take the gold. They took the lead.
Tonight on Dan Rather Reports.
It's a country where violence has become a way of life. Raging gun battles, assassinated police and politicians, beheadings, and dozens of Americans kidnapped. It is not Afghanistan or Iraq, but this is a war zone, and it's right in America's backyard. This is the border between Mexico and the United States. Across that bridge, Nuevo Laredo, a lawless city in a sprawling, lawless region controlled by major drug cartels who are battling over a multi-billion-dollar drug business. And this is the main gateway between Mexico and the United States.
This is a very, very important issue.
On the U.S. side, in Laredo, Texas, Sheriff Rick Flores is well aware of how close the danger is on the other side of the border.
I have never, ever seen the border in such violence. We had never seen so many homicides on the other side. I had never heard of gun battles lasting up to 45 minutes. The hardest thing is realizing that it's very common just 300 yards from here. You know, they have gun battles going off and during the day. They have gun battles when the sun goes down.
Gun battles have become so commonplace here that this fierce firefight between Mexican federal agents and drug cartel members was captured on videotape.
We've been here when we've heard the gunfire going off on the other side. Using high-powered weapons that we don't use on this side, AK-47s, rocket-propelled grenades.
You have a 45-minute gun battle with a fair number of people using AK-47s.
50 caliber weapons.
50 caliber?
Yes, sir.
Well, you can hear it over here.
Yes, sir.
Loud and clear.
Nuevo Laredo, Mexico, once a quiet border town, has become one of the most dangerous cities in the world. It's an unpleasant fact, but a fact. Over much of Mexico, drug-related violence is reaching unprecedented levels. 2,000 people have been killed this year alone. These aren't random murders. Victims are kidnapped, tortured, and executed, often in brutal ways. In the most grisly example, 5 heads were rolled onto a dance floor in a popular nightclub. This was a revenge killing. The heads belonged to local drug dealers.
It seems incredible that anyone would actually do this.
But it is not just cartels slaughtering one another. Dozens of elected officials, police officers, and journalists have been targeted and systematically killed, and innocent civilians are caught in the crossfire.
When you see people that have no regard for life, women and children especially, it's something that is alarming to all of us.
There is deep concern among U.S. law enforcement that Mexico's escalating violence will spiral out of control and spill over the border.
Just out there, about 100 yards, is the river that separates the United States from Mexico.
I went out with Sheriff Flores' deputies to see for myself what they deal with on a nightly basis.
And over there in Nuevo Laredo, it's a virtually lawless city, all part of these two warring drug cartels wanting the territory. And it's not too strong to say that on this side of the border in Laredo, they're doing all they can to keep what's happening in Nuevo Laredo from spilling over here.
We had a homicide right here at this intersection.
Shooting homicide?
Exactly, with an AK-47.
Well, one of the things that's changed, they've got heavy automatic weapons.
Tonight, Sheriff Flores' men are trying to serve a warrant, but discover their suspect had fled to the no man's land across the border.
They will detain him and hopefully they'll extradite him back for us.
His mother says he's in Nuevo Laredo.
Exactly. And they've seen him. So they've been traveling across. They go across and they're walking the downtown area, stuff like that, see if they spot this guy.
Another routine stop. What it shows you is the crime traffic goes so easily back and forth between Nuevo Laredo and Laredo.
But the biggest traffic is the drug traffic that comes across the 3 bridges that connect Mexico to Laredo, Texas.
The cocaine industry has shifted from Florida now into Mexico. Mexico is the main corridor into the United States. We've got 6,000 to 7,000 trucks crossing on a daily basis.
On a daily basis?
On a daily basis. Do you think that U.S. Customs Enforcement inspects every single truck? I think not.
America has an insatiable appetite for drugs.
A large percentage of the drugs that come into this country come in through this route. One way or the other come up through Mexico.
That's correct.
Michael Braun, one of the most experienced drug-fighting agents in America, is now the Chief of Operations for the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration.
The overwhelming majority of drugs that enter our country, it's somewhere between 80 to 90%. And I'm talking about cocaine, heroin, both South American and Mexican heroin, methamphetamine, large amounts of meth, marijuana, and club drugs, ecstasy and other drugs make its way across that southwest border and into the United States.
And the argument that says because the United States is such a consumer of illicit drugs, that we have blood on our hands?
Do we have blood on our hands? I believe we do, because there's a lot of blood being spilled behind this phenomenon.
That's because almost all of the violence taking place in Mexico is the direct result of a turf war between 2 powerful cartels.
That swath of territory, if you will, that corridor that leads into the United States has been traditionally controlled for many years by the Gulf Cartel. Right now, it is under attack.
The Gulf Cartel's territory has always been the northern part of the country, which includes the city of Nuevo Laredo. But when the cartel's leader, Josiel Cardenas, was arrested and imprisoned in 2003, it was the opportunity the rival Sinaloa cartel had been waiting for.
It's all about greed and it's all about turf. That's what motivates these people from the time they get up in the morning until the time they lay down at night and go to sleep. And it's what they dream about in between. It's what motivates them.
They quickly moved in and began fighting for control of Mexico's main corridor into the United States, Nuevo Laredo. Whoever controls that city controls the main route for trafficking the drugs through Laredo and up Interstate 35, through Texas and on into America's heartland. It's a piece of real estate these 2 cartels are fighting to the death over, for good reason.
It provides them with not millions, but hundreds of millions of dollars in profit each year.
So far, the Gulf Cartel has kept control, but with so much at stake, they have hired enforcers called Zetas, who watch everything that happens in Nuevo Laredo, who comes in and who goes out. They have an elaborate system of spotters and high-tech equipment which rivals that of U.S. law enforcement. As a result, they often know what happens in town well before the police do.
Well, as Butch Cassidy said to the Sundance Kid, who are these guys?
Who are these guys? They are ex-Mexican military defectors who were trained in Fort Benning, Georgia, in the School of the Americas, so they can go back and fight narco-terrorism. Well, they ended up going back and saying, well, it ain't worth it, I don't get paid too much money in the Mexican military. So we might as well work for the cartels.
Any idea how many there are?
There's probably over 10,000 that have defected the Mexican military and nowhere to be found. These youngsters They easily get drawn in by money, drive nice cars, they have drugs and women. And they live for today. They don't live for tomorrow. They're paid assassins, and they're trained, and that's what they do.
Have you been to Nuevo Laredo lately?
No, sir. Not anymore.
Do you go over there at all?
Not anymore.
Why?
Because I'm afraid to go over there. I could be a target.
Wait a minute. The sheriff of Webb County, Texas, with all the tradition of border police and Texas Rangers, is afraid to go into Nuevo Laredo?
Yeah. I've already seized $17 million worth of narcotics and have seized $1.5 million in cash. You think that I'm welcome over there?
And journalists investigating narcoterrorism aren't especially welcome either. We were advised that if we were going across the border, to keep a low profile, go early and get out quickly. And that's what we did.
This is bridge number 2.
We headed to Nuevo Laredo shortly after dawn, to a place where the U.S. State Department warns Americans to exercise extreme caution because of the brutal drug violence that has become almost routine. Our guide was a journalist who didn't want us to use his name because he has to live here after we leave. On the highway to the entrance of the city is a shrine to the fearsome-looking Santa de Muerte, or Saint Death. Lit cigarettes and beer are left in hopes that favors will be granted and protection offered. If the cartel members have a god, this is it.
It's what, 7:33 in the morning? Raul, why are we coming in so early?
It's better if you take the work early in the morning. Sometimes at night time, it's hard to do this kind of activities because the problem in Nuevo Laredo.
Problem being people shoot things.
Yeah, it's dangerous to be at night.
Perhaps no people in Mexico have been harder hit than the folks who live here. So far this year, 170 people have been killed in drug-related violence. 2 men from Laredo shot and killed. 2 men shot in broad daylight, driving down a main street. This man shot at the front door of his house. This man killed as he got off the bus.
You don't have to be here very long or be much of a reporter to see what the problem is. This house tells a lot about it. Bullet holes in the garage, bullet holes up here. This is a pretty good Nuevo Laredo neighborhood. But what happened was the drug traffickers, in their fierce battles for supremacy, sometimes erupt into battles that encompass whole neighborhoods. It did with this one. About a week before we got here, 45 minutes of automatic weapons fire, at least 4 people killed. Virtually this whole part of the city was silent and listened in fear as the big drug lords' armies fought it out.
Perhaps you're wondering what the police are doing to stop the violence that has threatened to shut down their bustling border town.
The police force in Nuevo Laredo I've seen gradually weakened over the past couple of years.
Mariano Castillo is a reporter who covers Nuevo Laredo and the border for the San Antonio Express.
For a long time, there's been problems with local police who were on the take with the Gulf cartel. And that eventually led, about 2 years ago, to a giant gun battle between local police and federal police.
It also led to things getting so bad, the federal police stayed to patrol the streets afterward last year.
The result of that was a huge clampdown where all 800 officers in Nuevo Laredo were kind of put on hold, all their backgrounds checked. And as a result, half of the police force either quit or was fired.
And now there are even fewer.
This is part of Nuevo Laredo's police station. About 160 police officers for the entire city. They're, of course, targets, prime targets for the drug cartels. This year alone, More than a dozen police officers have been killed. They are outmanned and outgunned, and they know it.
Castillo was a witness to one incident when an officer was gunned down.
And I heard it. It was just, machine gun fire. Not even right on the other side of the police station. I mean, right in the driveway of the police station. And my first thought was, is that really what I think it is?
This time, the officers survived, but far too often, officers are dying in a hail of bullets, including Nuevo Laredo's very own police chief.
If you could imagine a city this size not having a police chief, well, it doesn't. And here's the story of why and how. Alejandro Dominguez, about a year ago, was selected as the police chief. This was his private office. Before he could even get to his new office as police chief, he was gunned down. Hadn't been on the job even a full day, hadn't checked out his gun. His family was concerned about his becoming police chief, but he was determined to do it despite warnings, if you do it, bad things are going to happen to you. These bullet holes tell you the story.
After Dominguez was gunned down, another police chief, Omar Pimental, took over. A few months later, he resigned, saying the job was too stressful. Today, the position remains unfilled, leaving a city of more than 300,000 residents with no police chief. No one will take the job.
Incredible as it's going to strike most people. Here's a North American city that has no police chief.
And it's getting tougher to find someone to step up to the plate and take that job.
Doesn't this, or does it, make it extremely difficult to get new officers of integrity in Mexico? It seems to me, if I were a Mexican mother, I'd say, don't join the police force.
Well, I mean, look, I would say that with respect to Nuevo Laredo, the vast majority of the cops on that police department, I believe, have not been corrupted. And many of them are paying with their lives. It's a catch-22 situation, and that's what's most troubling for me as I think about this, and I've given it a lot of thought, by the way, and it's very troubling for my Mexican colleagues as well. You talk about the cop on the beat. He either succumbs to corruption and takes the money, or he chances being killed. That's a tough position to be in. But I can tell you, and I know this firsthand, that many of those cops, paid the ultimate price because they wouldn't take the silver, they wouldn't take the gold, they took the lead.
So what's it like to live in a city with no police chief? I spoke with some college students in Nuevo Laredo.
Well, you were telling me, though, that, yes, you're afraid, and nearly all of you said yes, and I can understand why. But tell me, what scares you the most?
Being at the wrong place at the wrong time. Nowadays, this time of day, you get shot like everywhere, no matter if you go out, if you go to the store, if you're out on the streets, even if you're playing outside with your friends.
Are you afraid to go out most of the time?
Yes.
Do you know anyone who's been hurt or, God forbid, killed in the violence? Any friend of yours? Or?
My uncle's friend, he got shot. I think he was mistaken by somebody else, and he got shot. It was related with a drug.
Did it kill him?
He got killed.
With so many concerns for their safety, these young people are looking for a way out of here.
As things now stand, do you have a future here in Nuevo Laredo or somewhere around here?
I can't answer my question because I don't know what's happening in this city.
Would you consider moving north across the border into the USA?
Maybe there are more security in the USA than in Mexico.
I want to get a job in Canada, maybe, or United States, but not here. It's so insecure.
As you drive through the city, for sale signs are everywhere, and downtown, business after business is shuttered.
Anybody else here close and go out of business?
This tourist town has been hard hit as shoppers are staying away.
Has the tourist traffic fallen off as much as I think it has?
Well, the tourists used to come, just put it this way, used to come with 40, 80, or 100 buses a week. I'm from all over, Louisiana, all over the United States.
Javier Ibarra is a small business owner who has managed to survive.
People knew that Laredo was the best place to shop, the best place to be in the restaurants, the best place to go and visit the discos and bars. We don't have buses coming anymore.
Well, what's happened to business? I mean, I see some of the stores are closed, some are open.
Business has been so bad that you cannot make up for the expenses, electricity, water, rent. We have been surviving. We have about maybe 40–50% still from the whole downtown area working.
That's still, if you only have 40 to 60%, that's a big loss.
It's the big loss.
What are the problems of the city?
Well, the violence, except the newspaper never talk anything about violence like we used to have in our newspapers.
Well, the newspapers now have no news of it at all.
In fact, most folks in Nuevo Laredo had no idea a 45-minute gun battle took place in this upscale neighborhood unless they happened to hear the gunfire. That's because most of the media here has been intimidated into silence, and those who have dared to report on the drug cartels in this city have paid a price. Guadalupe Escamilla, a radio reporter who broadcast a weekly crime show, was gunned down last year outside her office.
Journalists in Nuevo Laredo have one of the hardest jobs that I can think of. You know, even as an American journalist who covers some of this violence, I have the benefit of being able to parachute in, do my story, and come back to Texas. It's a real distinct reality compared to what these Mexican journalists in Nuevo Laredo are up against every day.
What they are up against is the constant threat of retaliation for printing anything about the cartels.
El Mañana is the biggest paper in Nuevo Laredo. They're leading daily. And in February of this year, a group of masked men barged in through the front door and just indiscriminately started firing 2 automatic weapons, hitting one reporter and seriously injuring him.
The reporter was left paralyzed. 2 years earlier, the editorial director was stabbed to death.
Newspapers, to their credit, did not bow down and continued to publish at least the basic facts. But eventually the threats, got to many of them.
Well, there's now this 4-inch metal barricade in front of the front door of the newspaper to discourage gunfire in the newsroom. But this once brave newspaper has stopped printing news about the drug cartels or the violence that's paralyzed the city. And not one of the reporters in there wanted to talk to us about why the media blackout, why they're not reporting on the biggest story of their time in their country.
Well, I mean, as a journalist, I think you obviously feel a level of, indignation. I mean, we're all, trained to try to get the story out. And it's frustrating, but also, as a person, you understand. I mean, no story is worth getting killed over, especially something that's been happening for years and will continue to happen, and that the government has not had very much success in combating.
Mexico's top prosecutor says there have been successes, but that's only triggered more violence.
We've captured many of the leaders of these cartels, and this destabilizes things. They are now fighting. They are cornered. This is why we had a bloodbath.
We spoke to Jose Luis Santiago Vasconcelos, who, as Mexico's top federal prosecutor for organized crime, has been the cartel's biggest enemy for the past 6 years. He's helped catch and convict a number of top cartel members, most notably the head of the Gulf cartel, Osiel Cardenas. As a result, he works in an office surrounded by metal detectors, unable to go anywhere without his security detail.
I paid a high price. The stress is something terrible. It gets to you. It's very strong. The permanent threat is hard, but I think it is worth it. I think it has been worth it.
Although former President Vicente Fox tried to aggressively pursue narco-traffickers, Vasconcelos acknowledges that much of the bloodshed in Mexico right now is a result of the steps taken to break the spine of these cartels.
What we are seeing now on part of the government is full-on combat. There's zero tolerance for organized crime gangs. And as a result, we're seeing very violent reactions from these groups because they've been left without leaders.
But Vasconcelos knows that not nearly all the leaders are behind bars.
We have many public enemies, and one of them is Chapo Guzman, Joaquin Guzman.
When we come back, you may be surprised to know where public enemy number one now lives. As they drive to one of Mexico's most popular resorts, most Americans don't realize that this paradise on the Pacific, famous for its beaches, has been hit by a wave of violence that is threatening to turn Acapulco into a beachfront battlefield. This is now the turf of one of the most wanted narco-traffickers in the country.
This man, El Chapo, know who he is?
Tough guy.
Who is he?
El Chapo Guzman. He's a major cartel leader. He escaped from a prison outside of Mexico City a few years ago. He's on the run, and he is a extremely violent, very dangerous trafficker.
Arrested in 1993, he escaped from a federal prison in 2001 and went back to his old gang. U.S. authorities now believe his latest base of operations is Acapulco. And DEA Chief of Operations Mike Braun has spent much of his 20-year career at the DEA trying to put traffickers like El Chapo out of business.
Your judgment, is he or is he not behind much of the violence in Acapulco?
I think he's absolutely behind much of the violence in Mexico.
Acapulco Mayor Felix Salgado is now dealing with a public relations and tourism nightmare.
Muchísimos problemas.
Lots of problems. We have had a lot of problems with narco trafficking. We had a very bad time here, a very bad period. The violence was out of control.
He's talking about shootouts like this one that broke out in broad daylight earlier this year, just 1 month after he took office. The turf war going on between the cartels and the border has now moved to the coast. This is the aftermath of an attack on a caravan of SUVs thought to be carrying El Chapo Guzman. Police fired on the caravan and a gunfight ensued, leaving 4 Sinaloa cartel members dead and 3 police injured.
Were you surprised to see that there were shootouts in broad daylight? Fairly lethal and large shootouts in Acapulco?
Yeah, I'll be perfectly honest, I was. I just didn't think it would spill over to a place like Acapulco.
You thought it was quieter than that?
Yes, I did.
But it was about to get worse. The revenge for the attack a few months later sent a chilling message.
One morning, 2 policemen's heads were stuck on the cuartel, in front of the headquarters, and that was just so shocking for everybody.
Christina Mosner, who runs a small hotel in Acapulco, was also shocked by the note the killers left at the crime scene. Quote, "So that you learn to respect." The 2 severed heads were left not far from the city's busiest tourist area.
And it was like here in Acapulco, Acapulco is like a little town actually, and it's a big city. There's already more than 1 million, 2 million people living here, but it's still a small town. So for that to be happening here it gives me the goosebumps,
Although Christina says she loves Mexico, she fears it may be time to leave.
I have a daughter here now, but I want the best for her, and if it's going to get too intense, I'm going to have to move for her safety,
And when residents start talking about leaving, that surely sends a chilling message to tourists. And to Teresa de Jesus, Acapulco's Director of Tourism.
The main activity that we have is tourism, and we're in trouble, of course. The average hotels is about 60% occupation. It's not as good as we want, as good as we need to have them.
But as long as the cartels are battling in the streets, half-empty hotels are an inevitable reality.
We recognize that it's a big problem. We cannot fight against them. We are not as powerful as they are.
One of the most powerful players in Acapulco may be a Texan they call La Barbie. Born Edgar Valdez, he got his nickname, we're told, because of his good looks. He's a fugitive in this country, wanted on marijuana charges, but he's wanted for much more in Mexico.
And Barbie is fair-skinned American. He was born in Laredo, but has spent most of his adult life in Mexico. Very violent individual, an assassin himself. He also trains other assassins and thugs at remote places in Mexico.
Is he the only American, Barbie, that you know of that's crossed over the border and become a big man with the cartels?
That has crossed over and reached his level. Yeah, I'd say he is the only one that I know of.
Barbie is now believed to be the chief enforcer for the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico.
Yes, that's correct.
Well, you know about this videotape, which was sent anonymously to the Dallas Morning News, which purports to show 4 men who've been beaten.
The video shows 4 men being interrogated. One by one, they give their names and ages. And then, a scene that has become familiar with hostages in Iraq. A gun comes into frame. The shooter's face is not seen on the tape.
Is it or is it not the belief that Barbie was responsible for that?
Some believe that Barbie was responsible for that. I mean, there has been multi-source reporting that he was, but we don't have a smoking gun.
Does the DEA believe that Barbie is a chief enforcer for one of the larger cartels?
He is undoubtedly a chief enforcer for one of the larger cartels. He is a lieutenant. And not only does he run and train teams of assassins, he is also extremely adept and knowledgeable with respect to surveillance, complex, complicated, technical surveillance and counter-surveillance measures against law enforcement, against the military.
With enemies like Barbie, for the police here, it's a deadly battle. This year, 33 police have been killed in the state of Guerrero, where Acapulco is located.
Yes, they killed some police. Then things started to fall apart. No one wanted to be a policeman in Acapulco.
With good reason. How could they confront the arsenals of the drug cartels with weapons like this?
You saw the weapons we had. They were a little obsolete. We're police who prevent crime. We're not like SWAT team types.
Under Mexican law, only federal authorities can actively pursue the cartels. But the police here need to be able to fight back. Now they are armed with intimidating-looking automatic weapons. A big change for a police force that, until this year, was mainly dealing with preventing crimes against tourists. Mayor Salgado says he had no choice. He had to try harder to keep his police force on the job. He's made law enforcement the #1 priority in Acapulco.
We have over 100 new patrol cars, new weapons, body armor, everything we need to protect the public.
The mayor is also trying to raise salaries, knowing it's the only way to even partly compete with the payoffs offered by the drug cartels.
The compromise has been to equip them with the tools they need for work and a good salary. Here, a policeman makes 5,000 pesos a month.
That's less than $500 a month, leaving police officers still vulnerable to bribes. But all the reforms from City Hall did not go unnoticed by the cartel.
They took my chief of security for City Hall. In the street, they kidnapped him and they killed him.
His body was found in an abandoned parking lot. He'd been beaten and suffocated. Security for the mayor is now at an all-time high. Wherever he goes, he is surrounded by bodyguards. But even with better equipment, the police here live on edge. With so many of their own killed, they know they are easy marks. This year, at least 125 police officers have been killed here in Mexico at the hands of the drug cartel.
Some believe that many of these officers are corrupt. There's another way to look at this. Some may be corrupt. I'm sure that some were corrupt. And oftentimes what happens, just like any drug trafficker, they're in it, by the way, for the greed.
For many, it comes down to plata o plomo. Take the money or take the bullet.
The important point is that when you're dealing with a threat that has hundreds of millions of dollars at their disposal to corrupt, you can buy just about anything you want.
By all accounts, Marcelo Garza y Garza was one of the good guys, a police chief whose job was to go after the drug cartels in one of Mexico's biggest cities, Monterrey.
He didn't like bodyguards. He said, I am not involved with any cartel, with any group. I don't get payoffs from anyone. They don't have any reason to hurt me.
Alejandro Garza Delgado is the patriarch of a large clan, many of whom are dedicated to public service or law enforcement. Youngest son Marcelo was chief of detectives for the state police agency.
Marcelo was always drawn to being a police investigator. He was director of investigation for the state police agency, what I was.
It was the same job his father had more than 20 years ago. Dangerous then, even more so now.
When I was doing it, I always had another police officer accompanying me.
Marcelo's brother, Alejandro, works at the Attorney General's office.
In August of last year, he helped detain a high-ranking crime boss, and they detained 12 more people.
Although Marcelo was on the front lines of Mexico's drug war, his family worried that he didn't take the danger seriously enough.
He laughed about having security, and I told him, this enemy isn't small. Be careful, I told him. This isn't a small enemy. And he laughed and said, Papa, nothing will happen.
But something did.
He only had a driver. He never had bodyguards. He was so sure of himself and so sure he was doing the right thing. Whenever he had to do family things, he'd send his driver home and go by himself.
That's exactly what happened 3 months ago. He sent his driver home and went to meet his wife at church.
I heard that someone important had been killed. It was at Fatima Church. I tried calling Marcelo to find out who it was, but he never answered.
I was all ready to go to sleep early. So then a daughter of mine called the house by phone. And what happened to Marcelo? What happened to Marcelo?
And then I spoke to Marcelo's deputy who was on the scene, and he said, I haven't gone near the body yet. As soon as I found out the Attorney General had shown up, and when my brother didn't answer his phone, then I had an intuition. The person who was killed was my brother.
He had seen his brother that morning at breakfast, and they had talked about his work.
He told me that he wanted to spend more time with his family, that his job took him away too much.
He was a good son.
Saludamos a la familia Garza Garza.
Demasiado amante de sus hijos.
Very loving with his children and his wife. She's suffering, and so are we, of course. For us to remember him is very difficult.
Y Marcelo siempre será recordado por nosotros y por esta institución.
The city of Monterrey held a ceremony last month, naming a street after Marcelo and dedicating a plaque in his honor at the main office where he worked. Concerned for the family's safety, the state has now given them the bodyguards Marcelo refused.
The first thing I thought when I knew he was dead, his confidence and his faith in people killed him, his trust.
Marcelo Garza y Garza is one of 6 police chiefs killed this year in the state of Nuevo León.
I know for a fact that some of these officers that have been killed would not succumb to corruption. They refused. They dug in and would not allow themselves to be corrupted. And they paid the ultimate price. They were gunned down, or they were stabbed, or they were blown up. They paid the ultimate price, and they're heroes in their country.
When we come back, dozens of Americans missing in Mexico. At night, the festive lights of Nuevo Laredo invite folks to cross the border for an evening of margaritas and music. But making this journey has become increasingly dangerous. In case after case, Americans have come here and simply disappeared.
It's 6 blocks to the across the bridge and never come.
They never got home. He never came back.
Sheriff Rick Flores is convinced this is the work of the drug cartels.
Kidnappings have happened frequently. It's a way of showing that they're in control.
Well, according to the figures I have, more Americans have been kidnapped in this general area than in Iraq over the last couple of years. Is that true?
That is correct. But we've got 40 people missing from Laredo, Texas.
I think it's going to come as a surprise to most Americans to hear you say there's been 40 Americans kidnapped in and around Laredo. It's a staggering figure.
Most of those who've gone missing vanished in Nuevo Laredo. All are American citizens. I met with a small group, 2 mothers, a father, and a wife. Each is waiting for word on what happened to a missing loved one. Rosita Gonzalez's 2 sons were coming back from a day trip to Monterey. They called to say they had made it to Nuevo Laredo and would be home soon. Priscilla Cisneros and her husband haven't seen their daughter Brenda since she went across the bridge to celebrate her birthday. That was 2 years ago. Danielle Ortiz believes her husband Sergio went over for a business meeting and never returned.
Did you consider Mexico a dangerous place when your husband went?
No, I mean, especially Nuevo Laredo for us, it's like, it's about a city. It's just only crossing the bridge and you are in Nuevo Laredo, Mexico. But it's, for a lot of people here, it's considered almost the same town.
And there was some law enforcement.
There's like 3 or 4 years ago, the law had started losing a little bit the control of the city, and it's when the killings, kidnapping start.
Well, what do you think happened to your husband?
At the beginning, we even had thought maybe it could have been a mistake of identity. Maybe it could have been at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Did you ever receive a ransom note or a telephone call from somebody making contact?
No, absolutely not.
Nothing?
Nothing at all.
And the FBI, have they been on the case?
Yeah, the FBI has been investigating all those cases.
But they haven't turned up anything?
They haven't turned out anything.
Samuel and Gerardo Gonzalez, ages 18 and 24, headed to Monterey for the day 2 years ago. They didn't tell their mother because they didn't want her to worry.
Did you know they were in Mexico?
No. They didn't want me to know.
The brothers called their mother as they approached Nuevo Laredo to say that they'd be home in less than an hour. That was the last she heard from them.
And what do you think happened to your boys?
I have no idea.
No idea?
No idea.
Have you heard any news of them at all?
No.
Well, seemingly they just disappeared.
Yes.
Brenda Cisneros was celebrating her 23rd birthday.
In September the 17th, the 2004, my daughter, Brenda, she celebrated 23 years. And my husband and me, I go to the local restaurant for the dinner. And Yvette, the best friend, she's go to the restaurant and pick up. And Brenda was in surprise party and go to the New Laredo. And this is the best friend, the Brenda.
After the surprise party, Brenda went across the bridge to Nuevo Laredo with her friend Yvette to attend a street fair and a concert. That's when they both vanished.
My daughter is only my daughter, only my baby. She was studying in the college for the business. And I don't know what happened. Innocent victims.
Although it has been almost 2 years, these families hold on to hope. Sheriff Flores fears the worst.
I call it beauty can be a curse. Some of these women have gone across to party and they've been kidnapped. It's my understanding that they've been kidnapped by these people and sent or taken to the drug lords and say, hey, here are some gifts that I bring you.
Do you think she's still alive?
Oh, yes. I think in my heart is alive, yes. My faith is in God. And I hope alive.
Do you think the boys are still living?
I make them like they're in a trip and then one day they'll come back.
But mothers usually have a good instinct for these things.
Mm-hmm.
What does you feel? You feel that they're still living?
Yes.
Maybe. And come back.
And what about you? Wives also have a good instinct about their husbands.
It's why it's been more than 3.5 years, almost 4 years for me to live without my husband. He's the only person I have here. And I think it's what is keeping me going on every day until I don't have any answer or I don't find anything of him. I will not accept that he's gone.
The families have started their own group dedicated to finding their children, but some have gone even further. William Slaymaker lost his stepdaughter Yvette the same night Brenda disappeared.
I raised Yvette since she was 9 years old. I love her as one of my own daughters.
Angry at what he felt was a lack of effort by Mexican and U.S. authorities, William Slaymaker took matters into his own hands.
I've knocked on drug dealers' doors on this side and on that side. I found Yvette's car. I went over there on a daily basis for 30 days. After 30 days, to the day, I found Yvette's car in Nuevo Laredo. It was in an impound lot owned by a Mexican judge.
The new mayor of Laredo, Texas, Raul Salinas, says helping the families find their loved ones is a priority.
We want to get answers. We want to come bring those families back, I mean, the kids that are missing, so they can rejoin their families. It's a very difficult thing. What can we do? We can continue to pressure the Mexican government, all the way from the local government to the federal government, to ensure that these cases do not turn cold.
One of the chief sources of frustration for these families is the attention other incidents get, such as the case of missing teenager Natalie Holloway. These people feel forgotten.
Why nobody cares about us? We're not only one family. We're a lot of families that were suffering the same pain.
What did you think about it when you saw this kind of constant coverage?
Why one person can get so much attention? And here in Laredo, we're 36 American citizens missing. Could it be because we have all Hispanic last name? And I think it is.
I truly believe that that is one of the main reasons why nothing is being done.
FBI officials say 60 Americans have been kidnapped in and around the border area since 2004. The latest, 5 men kidnapped from a ranch in Nuevo Laredo. Among them, 2 Americans, still missing. Coming up, a security threat from south of the border that goes way beyond drugs. This past week, a new president was inaugurated in Mexico City. And the brawling reception with jeers and catcalls that preceded Felipe Calderón taking office may be a warning that our neighbor to the south is facing a number of challenges beyond the drug war that is threatening to turn Mexico into a narco state. This election was so close, less than 1% of the votes separated the 2 candidates, that a court ultimately had to certify the winner. But that didn't stop the other candidate from swearing himself in as the winner. With demonstrations out on the street and inside the joint session of Congress, there is legitimate concern whether President Felipe Calderón will be able to keep his promise to escalate the war against drug traffickers. A promising sign that he's serious. His first official act was to announce that he is seeking pay hikes for the Mexican army that is battling the cartels. But the army and federal police in Mexico have found that cutting off the head of the snake has not solved the crisis. DEA Operations Chief Mike Braun knows that all too well.
We've talked to at least one high-ranking Mexican law enforcement official who says he's cut off the heads of many snakes, but the level of violence goes up. What does this tell us?
I've said from the beginning, although we cut the head off the snake, do I believe that some other cartel or syndicate is going to move into that area and take over or attempt to take over? Yeah, they will. But this is an opportunity for law enforcement and the Mexican government to gain or regain control of that piece of real estate.
Well, forgive me if you must, but to an outsider who's grown up going to Mexico, for every time you cut off the head of a snake, you or the Mexican authorities, seems another dozen at least rise up.
Yeah, they do rise up. You either take it on and you deal with it, or it ends up running the country and you become a narco state.
If you cut off enough heads, you will get a handle on it.
I believe you will get a handle on it. But I'm also going to tell you, do I believe, after 32 years in this business, that we're going to extinguish this threat and this problem in its entirety and completely? Absolutely not.
And how does this threat affect the United States? According to a recent report by the Homeland Security Subcommittee on Investigations, the growing violence along the 2,000-mile border we share with Mexico has created a growing threat from countries that sponsor terrorism. In 2005, more than 650 individuals from these special interest countries were apprehended by Border Patrol agents trying to cross into the U.S.
About 3 or 4 months ago, they caught 8 Iraqis in Mexico. There's been Sudanese money found on this side by local ranchers. They have found Korans in the dirt, in the property of local ranchers. All this information has been turned over to the FBI.
Laredo Sheriff Rick Flores says the idea of building a wall to keep Mexican citizens from crossing into the U.S. misses the bigger threat.
My biggest concern is this, that a lot of people in America don't know, is that these people that came to harm us in 9/11 and smash those airplanes in the Twin Towers were here legally. The people that are coming in to cause more destruction to America are going to come in illegally. And those people look exactly like I do, and they blend in perfectly. They're chameleons. They're going to come to Mexico, they're going to learn the culture, they're going to learn the language, they're going to obtain fake IDs or passports, and they're going to blend in with Mexican workers who are coming over to come and work. That's our biggest concern. But those people are not coming to work.
You know that's going to scare the hell out of a lot of people.
It should scare the hell out of Washington and shake them up and say, look, all we want is for people to come and start providing border security. You can't have homeland security if you don't have border security.
In thinking about what you've just seen, in thinking about Mexico, you may want to consider this. While our military does battle thousands of miles away to keep Afghanistan and Iraq from becoming failed states, have we lost sight of Mexico, a country on our very doorstep, as it struggles with its own brands of corruption, violence, and chaos? Even in the heated immigration debate, we hear much more about economic concerns than we do about homeland security. At present, there is the dangerous prospect of the bribery and gunfire, the plata o plomo of Mexico's drug lords, following the flow of narcotics into the U.S. Looking ahead, do we also risk seeing terrorists travel that same road into America? Some talk of building a wall along the U.S.-Mexican border, but in our perceptions of Mexico, we are already looking through a wall of long-standing preconceptions and, yes, prejudice, a wall of apathy and incomplete information that colors our understanding of that large, tremendously complex and important nation. With the swearing in of a new Mexican president comes a new opportunity for Americans, for our elected officials and our news organizations to breach that wall, to vigorously and realistically reassess what is going on, what's really going on in Mexico, along with the opportunities and considerable challenges that the U.S.-Mexican relationship presents. If we let that wall the wall of preconceptions and prejudice, apathy, and lack of information stay in place, if we turn away from the dangers that the people of Mexico are facing today, we may well risk facing some of the same problems here in the U.S. tomorrow. For HDNet, Dan Rather reporting. Good night.